Oh, my microphone was off. Sorry. I am a little frazzled. Oh, that's why it's dark. I'm running a little behind today, but hello! Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds, and welcome to the live stream. I don't know if anyone's quite here yet, and I forgot my water upstairs. I will be right back. I will leave this on. Not quite as organized today. I'll be right back. Okay. Huh. Nobody's here. Okay. Did I load the correct one? Let me see. Hello? I think I did. Let me see. Let's see. Oh. Well, anyway, I'll do my intro again because it's a little scattered. Oh, no. And there we go. Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds, and welcome to my book garden. Actually, welcome to my basement, but there's books. There's some flowers over there. It counts. I'm Rosebud Reads, and I'm very excited that you're here. Hi, Momars Rover. Welcome to the stream. I'm a little scatterbrained tonight. I've been getting ready for a convention this weekend. I have decided that I am going to be streaming this Thursday. I'm pretty much set convention-wise, so why not? These have been around 2-ish hours, 2.5. That's not too late. So we're just going to do it, right? I'm enjoying the book, and I want to just keep going with it. So yeah, we're going to have our normal Thursday, normal Tuesday, except this coming Tuesday, I'll have a new tattoo, and it's going to be amazing, and I'll be so excited to show it. Probably along with some of the con stuff that I get, because I like sharing, because it's cool, and we're all nerdy, and we're all awesome, and I'm just, it's exciting. But I hope everyone, how many chapters do we have left? So I kind of broken it into 5 chapter things. So today's 1, 2, and then kind of a longer 3. So there's today, Thursday, and then I think we might finish on Tuesday. In all honesty. So I will need to put up a new poll. So here's the tricky thing. Yeah, so soon. We're really cranking through these because there's only 2 books in the series. So yeah, today's and today, Thursday, Tuesday, yeah. So the choices will be primarily between the Imperial Uncle and Peach Blossom Debt, because those are the single book series that I have left from Peach Flower House Publishing, and I want to get through the books that I have. With that, I also have the first book of In the Dark, but I cannot find any of the books. Maybe I'll do that after we finish the other 2, like just to put it out there. I have no idea where I would find the next book in it. I've never read it. I think there's 3 in that series. I managed to get my hands on one right before everything closed, and I just didn't happen to get the others. So all that, but I will put that up after this live stream between the Imperial Uncle, Peach Blossom Debt. I'm gonna leave out In the Dark. But yeah, we'll figure out what we're gonna start on Thursday. Not this Thursday, but next Thursday. That's super exciting. There is, let me double check. I think I'm getting 3 tattoos this month. Which was a scheduling nightmare, but I think I managed to make it so that none of on live streaming nights. Yes, I did. Or wait. Yep. All the other days are there, but you'll get to see some of them. Yeah, and it's gonna hurt money wise, but I'm taking a little bit out of the con budget. Because it's a choice. It's a choice and it's important. But yeah, it's one of them's probably going to be a 5-hour one. Another one I could easily see it going 4 hours, and then the other one's probably be like a 1.5 hour one. It's actually going to be a mushroom. The smaller one's going to be two white mushrooms. So I thought I'd get a little commemorative tattoo for Little Mushroom in this channel, just kind of starting. So yeah, I'm really excited. It's actually going to be a Wangshan tattoo, 2 different spots. The Lan Dragon and Foxian kind of curling around my wrist. So I'm very excited to share. So it'll probably be red and puffy on Tuesday, but I will still happily share. But yes. In any case, I will make sure to put that poll up between Imperial Uncle Peach Blossom at tonight. So you'll have time to figure out what's what. But anyway, if there's anything exciting going on in anyone's life right now, I'd love to hear. But if not, we'll kind of look back. So I'll summarize, well, people type if they would like to. So our boys are finally back together, and they had some sweet moments last time. But now they're actually in the Bayuan camp right outside of, let's see, what place are they outside of? They're about to attack. And they confessed about the goose situation where Fu Shen actually sent out a good number of geese carrying the message, "How is my wife?" And was joking about how he almost turned Lang into a vet. And what happened, the soldiers in the Bayuan company were wondering what happened to the Bayuan commander with civil accomplishments enough to calm the nation and military accomplishments enough to pacify the universe, to turn him into a husband who cared for nothing but his wife. So they're being all lovey-dovey, right? Imagine all the random people who found the geese. Imagine all the angry wives or husbands that found the geese. Like, honey, what you getting up to? That's pretty funny. But yes, they're about to attack Chang'an. And one of the commanders actually asked, like, how successful do you think we'll be here, Commander? And Fu Shen is smiling, saying, like, 30 to 40%. Like, Chang'an is easy to defend but hard to attack. It will be a bitter battle. And they're all thinking, what are you smiling about? And he's just smiling about his husband/wife because they like each other. And one kind of question about it, he was like, everyone in the country was aware that I got married to this person. Like, it is true that Lord Yan is in service to the court, but he is mine. Even the new court's emperor has to obey by first come, first serve. If I want him to stay here, then not one hair off his head will leave by this door. General Zhao, do you understand me? So he pulled this is my wife. Fuck off. All right. And on that note, we start chapter 69. Nice. Quietly serving. Oh, wait. I forgot to do my spiel. So I do not own Golden Terrace. I do not own anything associated with it. I'm just doing this for the heck of it. So please don't come after me. I'm not making any money off this. The only thing that I do own is the physical copy of the book in front of me and my time. This is a very chill stream, if you couldn't already tell. If that's not to your taste, I'm sorry. Maybe stick around. Might have some fun. But if not, I get it. It's not to everybody's taste. And I hope you find something that is. Yeah, I think that about covers it. Oh, this is also a mature stream. Like, we're talking about some serious subjects. I mean, adult relationships and war. So, yeah, keep that in mind. Now I can start. Chapter 69. Quietly serving as the source of calamity, Yan Xiaohan pretended not to have understood the undercurrents running between Fu Shen and Xiao Shichan. Oh yeah, so Xiao Qichan came over to ask for Yan Xiaohan back, and the Fei Long guard that were over there, he was like, "Can I have my dude back?" And Fu Shen was like, "No, you can't." The conflicted relationship between the Beiyuan army and the new court would sooner or later be brought to the forefront. It was true that Fu Shen wanted to rebuild the country, but it couldn't be a matter of him fighting up ahead while the new court plugged leaks in the back, ending up empty-handed with only a reputation for being loyal and obedient. Emperor Yuntai's assessment of Fu Shen was that he was loyal to the nation rather than the sovereign. While he imagined Fu Shen to be excessively rich in ambition, this statement was quite accurate. That Fu Shen had been willing to bow to Emperor Yuntai, that Fu Shen that had been willing to bow to Emperor Yuntai had been in memory of former affection, but with son Yundan, it was different. Never mind former affection. Just in view of the new emperor's treatment of Fu Ling, Fu Shen couldn't let him off. So yeah, his baby sister was not being treated great by the new emperor. Moreover, Emperor Yuntai was doing just fine in Shu. Fu Shen hadn't previously intervened to dethrone an emperor, but that didn't mean that he wouldn't step in the future to determine who sat on the throne. Fu Shen's words had caused cold sweat to steam from Xiao Shichen. He felt that he ought not to have been loose-tongued. What had he brought up Yan Xiaohan for? Wouldn't it have been nice if everyone could have happily talked over how to take Chang'an? General Xiao didn't have a deep understanding of Yan Xiaohan and Fu Shen, and didn't know what their relationship actually was. More than that, he couldn't work out Fu Shen's intention in keeping Yan Xiaohan with him. It was just that the rumors of the court's dog injuring a loyal and upright man had entered people's hearts too deeply. Because of this, looking on as an outside observer, he felt that the greatest likelihood was that Yan Xiaohan had committed too many sins in the past, and now he was suffering retribution. I will bear the Lord Marquis's thoughts in mind, Xiao Shichen said with all sincerity over his face. Since Lord Yan is also not opposed, then we will follow the Lord Marquis's arrangements in all things. A soft laugh suddenly sounded in the silent room. Yan Xiaohan slowly raised his head and met the gazes of the other two as they came his way. With a false smile, he said, "Very well, that's what we'll do." When Xiao Shichen had bid farewell and left, Fu Shen abandoned his gravity and shook his head, smiling. "Lord Yan, it seems that you really are unpopular. He threw you away just like that, without a bit of hesitation." Yan Xiaohan also shook his head. "I truly had no idea that I would one day be taken by force." "What are you talking about?" Fu Shen said. "Don't blacken my name. I legally married you, obviously." Yan Xiaohan couldn't maintain a serious expression. He laughed, his heart softening to a pool of water. Clinging, he drew near to demand a kiss. Fu Shen kissed the corner of his lips. The upshot was that Yan Xiaohan bit back. Holding him down in the wheelchair, he kissed him firmly to win back his losses. God, they're so cute. Like, they're so sassy, but, like, it works. Some days later, all the armed forces assembled outside the city, and the Battle of Chang'an formally began. Chang'an was also called Shijing, the western capital. It was the old capital of the previous dynasty, located at the center of the Central Plains. The population of Chang'an was numerous, and its prosperity no less than the capital's. After the Tartars had come south and invaded, they had treated it as a major strategic location. They had looted the city for several days, causing great suffering to the people and leading to them missing the rule of the Shao dynasty. When the Beiyuan army had stamped out resistance in the surrounding towns and villages, a lot of people had secretly run from the city to furnish them with secret information. It was said that inside Chang'an there were many roving braves and righteous men who often took advantage of cover of night to assassinate the Tartar officials. And the common people every now and again set fires at the city gates, causing smoke and dust to spread everywhere, creating a false impression that the army was attacking. They were well provisioned and had inside and outside working together. It was a good time to attack the city. On the 30th day of the 5th month, all forces mobilized. Shao Qichen formed the vanguard, the Beiyuan cavalry were the main guard, and Xiang Shou's forces were the rear guard. The Tartar and Shi massed 40,000 troops outside of Chang'an. The soldiers of the new court were for the most part border troops who had escaped south to Jiangnan after the war was lost. At the outset, they were somewhat timid in battle. The Tartar High General Shi Hua spied out a flaw in their defenses and, relying on brute force, charged through, wielding his sword, and actually cut a swath through the vanguard. The Tartar cavalry surged forward in a body. The vanguard's formation was dispersed. The bodyguards around Shao Qichen were cut down from their horses in rapid succession. He was also wounded in action. The army was in disorder. The Tartar High General became increasingly savage. Around him, a small empty space no one dared to enter formed. At that critical moment, Yan Xiaohan arrived, leading a team of Beiyuan soldiers, and extricated the besieged General Shao. "Everyone remain calm," he cried. "Shield bearers forward. The rest form a sword formation. Don't panic." Before Shao Qichen could catch his breath, he saw Yan Xiaohan spur his horse onward. Holding an anti-cavalry sword, like a gale sweeping by, he cut down several men in the blink of an eye. Covered in fresh, sinister blood, he tore through the enemy's encirclement and, riding at the head, charged up in front of Shi Hua. On a battlefield, it was easy for the blood to go to your head. Yan Xiaohan was killing people like flies, but he was well aware that the main guard's eastern flank had just encountered a sneak attack from the barbarians' hidden forces. Fu Shen couldn't spare himself to come look after the vanguard now. If the vanguard was dispersed and the main guard was caught between two enemy forces, they could give up any thought of returning today. To take down a man, you first took down his horse. To capture thieves, you first captured their king. The first priority was to kill this fierce-looking Tartar blockhead. Yan Xiaohan came from the Feilong Guard. He was decent at directing a small band in a brawl, but he had no experience leading troops. Therefore, he didn't fight over command with Shao Qichen, but single-handedly cut a path to cross swords with Shi Hua. That was where his strong point lay. On horseback, Shi Hua was a head taller than even Yan Xiaohan. He held a wrought iron broadsword, and when he wielded it, the force was fit to split mountains and part seas. Even the gust of it passed passing could sting your face. Yan Xiaohan couldn't meet him directly in much of strength. Instead, he took a deft and peculiar approach, his angle cunning and ruthless, each attack jabbing at a vital target. He had made up his mind to hound him to death. He had made a crude appraisal of the situation earlier and knew that this Tartar was the backbone of the barbarian army. If he could drag him down when Shao Shichen caught his breath, he would naturally be able to regroup and enter battle with the enemy again. The two of them fought inextricably. That was harder than it should have been. The sounds of their swords clashing came as close as a strong rain pattering down. Shi Hua had probably never encountered an opponent on the battlefield who came from the imperial palace. He was dazzled by his lively and elegant swordplay. He couldn't keep up right away and exposed a flaw in his defense. Yan Xiaohan's eyes chilled. Without hesitation, he dealt a backhanded stroke. His thin blade slipped into a crack in Shi Hua's armor like a viper, and using the momentum of that stroke, it twisted, cutting off Shi Hua's arm like slicing through tofu. Then there came a sudden sound of something whistling through the air. He split off his attention to look from his peripheral vision and saw a chilly blade chopping slantwise at his back. This was Shi Hua's subordinate officer who, having noticed things were going badly, had rushed to the rescue. On the momentum of his earlier strike, Yan Xiaohan's second strike had already come near Shi Hua's neck. Giving up now would have been a failure right at the point of success. Not looking sideways, he didn't shield himself. There was nothing in his eye but the vigorously pulsing artery on the flesh of a man's neck. He was actually planning to take the blow, as long as he could take down Shi Hua's head. A splash of blood. The dull sensation of the blade cutting through bone still lingered at his fingertips. A glaring, wide-eyed head fell beneath the horse's hooves, but the anticipated pain from his back didn't come on schedule. I bet it's his husband. Getting distracted? Haven't you killed anyone before? Yan Xiaohan turned his head in confusion and found that Fu Shen had at some point arrived behind him. Called it! A headless corpse had fallen at his feet. He had his reins in one hand and a sword in the other. The point of that sword was still dripping blood. Beneath his helmet, his visage was handsome, cold, and stern. His features seemed frosted over. His scrutinizing gaze was like an icicle stabbing right into Yan Xiaohan's eyes. His bodyguards immediately encircled them, tightly protecting the two of them. Fu Shen seemed to want to scold, but narrowly held himself back. He only coldly said, "Come here, follow me, don't run around. There's a next time it won't go so well." Lord Yan, who had just killed a Tartar high general in 2 strikes, was more well-trained than a Pekingese. Without daring to delay for an instant, he spurred his horse on and leapt towards him. Grim-faced, Fu Shen issued commands ordering the vanguard to raise their swords, form a wall, and move forward. The Beiyuan cavalry had already cleaned up the ambush, and the General Shi Hua had been killed. The rest of the Tartar cavalry had lost the initiative and become timid. Their speed of attack had slowed. Now the Xiangshou forces came up from behind in a pincer movement with the Beiyuan army. Posture of the battle took a sudden turn. The battle itself took a full 8 hours to fight. The Han forces beheaded many thousands and at last wiped out the main strength of the Tartar army, or cavalry. The survivors of the defeated army abandoned the city and fled. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Fu Shen sent a team of soldiers to pursue and attack the stragglers. The 3 armies lined up and entered the city. Its people crowded the streets, cheering and weeping, all offering food and drink to congratulate the officers and men. At this point, Chang'an had been retaken. Making account of the dead and wounded, arranging for the city patrols, dealing with officials of all stripes, Fu Shen was busy all night so Yan Xiaohan also stayed up all night. Only when it was a full day only when it was full daylight and the Beiyuan soldiers who had been sent in pursuit of the stragglers returned to the city and shut the Tartar officials they had captured in the prefecture's office's prison, was arrest called to the rush and muddle. Everyone was unbearably weary, and each went to their rest. Fu Shen and the other officers were staying in an official mansion, a vast improvement on the rundown house in Tangli town. Yan Xiaohan was struck by a rare attack of obsessive cleanliness and washed himself several times before the smell of blood was gone from his body. When he returned to the bedroom, Fu Shen, who had finished washing up before him, was already asleep, leaning against the head of the bed. Oh, he tried to wait up for him. Only now did he feel his own heartbeat, throb after throb, full of rhythm, almost like some poetic meter, not urgent in the least. In a moment, the clamorous battle cries at last receded, and the small noises of his surroundings came to his ears, as if he were returning from hell to the land of the living, coming back to life. He stood there blankly for a long time, until Fu Shen's slow breathing paused. With his eyes closed, lazily asked, "What? Standing is punishment?" Yan Xiaohan abruptly came back to himself. He walked up to the bed and moved him to its inner side, then lay down beside him. "Why are you awake?" "With you standing there staring like you've lost your mind, how could I not wake up?" Fu Shen covered his mouth and yawned. He rolled over and put his arms around Yan Xiaohan's shoulders, touching the wound there. No, it was yesterday. You were a little too careless. I'm not going to scold you for it this time. You can learn from it yourself." "I was impatient." Yan Xiaohan willingly admitted his error. Through a thin inner robe, he embraced his gaunt back and softly said, "But how did you find out? There was so much distance between us." But Fu Shen didn't answer directly. Carelessly, he said, "If you were stabbed right under my nose, I'd have no more use for my life. I'm tired. Let's sleep." Yan Xiaohan didn't ask further. He considered it carefully for a while and thought that he had inadvertently found a drop of the tender feelings hidden deep beneath General Fu's armor. He had grown up in the capital. He'd never been on a battlefield before. His experience facing the enemy amounted to nothing. Though an army supervisor had no need to go into battle, Fu Shen had still been uneasy, which was why he had insisted on keeping him close to him, so he could keep a constant eye on him and avoid him being mistakenly injured in the heat of the battle. On the battlefield, in order to rescue Shao Shichen, he had to brace himself and meet the enemy. If Fu Shen hadn't constantly been keeping part of his attention on him, how could he have been in time to block that attack? How can you be so good? Watching Fu Shen's sleeping countenance, Yan Xiaohan thought that he had faintly tasted the sweetness of osmanthus candy. Restlessly, he thought, "Can hardly help myself any longer. Dude, after this, I'm going to see if I can find, order osmanthus candy, somewhere. Probably Amazon, let's be real. But, I want to try it. Maybe for the last chapter." When everything in Chang'an had settled, Yan Xiaohan found a reason to take Fu Shen out of the city. The two of them slowly went along a mountain path, looking at the blooming mountain flowers all around. When they had come midway up the mountain, a white marble memorial arch with relief carvings appeared at the end of the shady mountain road. From a distance, Fu Shen narrowed his eyes and looked that way. Azure Lotus Pond? What is this place? Yan Xiaohan smiled without answering. Taking his hand, he went forward. Not long after, the whole picture appeared. Inside was a villa built against the mountain, with pavilions and kiosks and picturesque disarray, trees and flowers coming in and out of view, and a gurgling stream surrounding it. At a rough glance, its area had to be close to 200 acres. Only a wealthy and extravagant person could have lived in such style. This mountain is called Mount Shuangbai. There are many hot springs on the mountain. Yan Xiaohan took Fu Shen through a covered corridor around the main building, and they came to a pool behind, wreathed in curling white steam. The manor was my adopted father's personal property, which came to me when he went into the West. Hot springs activate energy flow and ease pain. I've always wanted to bring you, but there was never any time. Fortunately, my wish has at last been fulfilled. Take a look, Lord Marquis. Are you satisfied? The differences between people truly are exasperating, Fu Shen sighed. Look at your father, who left you a villa with hot springs, and then look at my father, who left me a band of big, strapping men. Yan Xiaohan hugged him from behind and smilingly said, It doesn't matter. The villa and I are both yours. Fu Shen raised his eyebrows. Can such a thing be? Yan Xiaohan's unruly hands had begun to undo his belt. Hearing him, he kissed Fu Shen's face and unblushingly said, You said last time that you had legally married me, so why don't we do some things that you can only do once you're married? I love the way they end the chapters. They're just like an abrupt thought, and it's like, oh, okay. Like, not even in a bad way. It's just like, oh, we're done. Okay. Chapter 70. All that talk of hot springs stimulating circulation and relaxing muscles were total nonsense. After taking a soak, not only did Fu Shen's legs not improve, his waist was nearly useless. We all know why. Worn out, he retreated all the way to the opposite end of the pool. Pointing to the self-satisfied chief culprit, he said, Stay away from me. Don't come near. With sincere innocence, Yan Xiaohan said, Why don't I massage your waist for you? I won't do anything else. No need, said Fu Shen. Scram. So Yan Xiaohan said nothing else. Fu Shen raised his eyes briefly, heard that there was no movement from him, and couldn't help feeling a little uncertain. He wondered whether he had spoken too strongly. He felt as if he had kicked a person out of bed right after sleeping with him, rather lacking in gentleness and consideration. So he silently exhaled and decided to smooth his ruffled feathers. When he opened his eyes, he had found that Yan Xiaohan had at some point floated from directly across from him to at one side from him. If he had kept hesitating, his sneak attack may well have succeeded. Yan Xiaohan gave a dry laugh. Why don't you close your eyes and go back to sleep? Fu Shen was pointedly silent. You're too badly behaved, he said helplessly. Keep you around for entertainment? I'd be better off cooking you and having you for dinner. Yan Xiaohan silently gave him a winning smile. The crystalline ripples in the water sparkled. There were water droplets on his face, making the outlines of his features more distinct than ever. His pitch-black hair floated beside him. On his shoulders, neck, and collarbones, revealed out of the water, was a string of dotted red love bites. That smile was even more luminously moving. Even the green mountain and clear water faded beside it. It made Fu Shen look down and knit his brows, feeling that if this went on, he wouldn't be able to resist lighting the beacon of war. It's a weird way to put it. Yan Xiaohan had grown up eating the ordinary foods of the mortal world like everyone else and hadn't absorbed any particular magic from the universe. How could he look like this? Seeing Fu Shen close his eyes like a monk bewitched by a demon, putting him out of sight and out of mind, Yan Xiaohan knew that this was tacit consent, so he drew near, all smiles, and carefully pulled him into his arms. Jing Yuan. Fu Shen gave a humph. It's nothing. I just wanted to say your name, Yan Xiaohan said. I'm so happy that I keep being scared I'm dreaming. Maybe it was pain that had left him frightened. Now, when he thought of it, he still felt his heart palpitate. Though in his arms he held the greatest satisfaction of his life, he still anxiously recalled the feeling of trying to sleep alone. His agitation wasn't groundless. Never mind for the moment that the will of heaven was inconstant. Now that Chang'an had been retaken, Shao Shichen would remain here to await the court's orders, while the Beiyuan cavalry would continue to advance east. The thread of separation had nearly burned up to their eyebrows. To say goodbye now would be no different from gouging out a hunk of Yan Xiaohan's flesh. Fu Shen shook his hands out of the water to toy with them. Suddenly he said, I wonder what our house is like now. Well, this is a good place. It still isn't my home, Fu Shen said idly. Put aside your happiness for now. There will be time for sighing when we've retaken the capital. Unable to help laughing, Yan Xiaohan bent to his ear and said in a low voice, You mean that after we return to the capital, in the pool in our house, we can also— Ow! Fu Shen had given him a jab with his elbow, making a splash. Impressive. Yan Xiaohan wrapped him up with arms and legs together. During this harassment, he said hypocritically, All right, don't fool around. Let's be serious. When everything here has calmed down, I'm planning a trip to Shu. Fu Shen frowned. Planning to see the retired emperor? Yes, said Yan Xiaohan. After the incidents in the capital, the Feilong Guard and a large portion of the Imperial Guards, as well as a minority of the capital barracks, went west with the retired emperor. You've seen it yourself. While I can manage to put a word in to the new court, my influence is too shallow compared to the deep-rooted Jiangnan families, and there are too few people at my disposal. Things can't continue like this. So you want to get your old subordinates back from the retired emperor? Fu Shen asked. Why would he agree? But Yan Xiaohan was unwilling to explain. Leaving him in suspense, he said, I have my ways. Fine. Fu Shen knew he wouldn't ask recklessly and wasn't planning on meddling. He only said, You know what you're doing. Do you need my help doing anything? Yan Xiaohan said the first thing that came into his head. Make sure I've eaten my fill before I go. Shen pushed his big head underwater. I just love their relationship. Like, it's so healthy. And it's so refreshing that it's actually a healthy relationship. Like, this is goals. The two of them fooled around in the manor. Yan Xiaohan made it known that he wanted to collect on a whole year's debt. Time was truly limited. Reasoning by every possible method, ceding territory and paying indemnity, making a whole heap of ridiculous promises, he at last managed to talk him into canceling out half a year's debt and leaving the rest to be discussed when they returned to the capital. 2 days later, the two of them left the mountain and returned to the city. Yuan Huan, one of the Beiyuan officers Fu Shen had sent out from Guangzhou, was left to guard Shi Jing, while Yu Qiaoting continued leading their forces east, making preparations to capture Luoyang. With the Beiyuan army to serve as an example, Xiang Shou's military commissioner followed suit, stationing a trusted officer in Chang'an. Shao Shichen had thought that once Chang'an was taken, it would belong to the new court, but he had taken his eyes off things for a moment and had turned into shared property among 3 parties. He was all right with it when it came to leading troops and doing battle, but he wasn't skilled at intriguing, and he had offered up Yan Xiaohan to the Beiyuan army camp. Now, finally realizing that things weren't going well, he went to ask for Yan Xiaohan and also sent a messenger to ride at top speed back to Jinling and request orders from the emperor. Sadly, he didn't even get to see Yan Xiaohan's face this time. Fu Shen, with a cold expression of, "And just who do you think you are?" that couldn't be hidden by politeness, asked him to leave the Beiyuan army camp in exactly the same manner as before. Not long after, the Jiangnan court issued a decree, ordering Shao Shichen to continue leading the army north, joining the Beiyuan cavalry in an effort to take back Luoyang and leave Chang'an temporarily ruled by the three parties. But not a single word mentioned Yan Xiaohan. Hang on. Quick water break. In the 8th month, Luoyang was retaken. At the end of the 8th month, news got out that Yan Xiaohan had entered Shu and paid his respects to the retired emperor, then restructured the imperial guards and the old capital barracks into the Tianfu army. Jinling's court was in an uproar. Only Emperor Chengshi seemed to have predicted this. He issued a decree conferring upon Yan Xiaohan the title of representative of the Tianfu army and made the Tianfu army part of the emperor's personal guards, then ordered Yan Xiaohan not to return to court but to continue going north to join Shao Shichen and retake the capital. Only now did the Jiangnan party in court realize that Yan Xiaohan offending the emperor and being expelled from the central authority the outset had been showed action by the sovereign and minister together for their benefit. With Jiangnan's families to obstruct it, the northern campaign had taken a long time to settle. Had Yan Xiaohan not dealt almost provocatively with pure consort Shui Sheng, Shui Sheng, head of the 4 Jiangnan ministers, wouldn't have decided he would rather concede on the northern campaign if it meant kicking him out, and agreed to the court dispatching troops to join the Beiyuan cavalry to encircle Chang'an. They had miscalculated. Emperor Changshi had little talent but great designs. While he frequently had no ideas of his own, he certainly wasn't without wild ambition. He had known prosperity and was in the end unwilling to be content with sovereignty over only the corner of Jiangnan. In his bones was a yearning to retake the central plains and unify the entire empire. At the outset, when Yan Xiaohan had received orders to form an army for the court independent of the military commission, he had pointed out 2 paths to Emperor Changshi. One was open: reorganize the surviving soldiers of the defeated forces and recruit new soldiers. This was the army that Shao Shichen was commander-in-chief of. The composition of Jiangnan's army was uneven, their fighting abilities low. They were purely a motley crew cobbled together at the last moment, but they were enough to put up a front. The other path was hidden, and was his most important mission on leaving Jinling. Those who had gone west with Emperor Yuntai were all the elite forces of the North Yemen Imperial Guards and the capital barracks. The Imperial Guards were Yan Xiaohan's followers, and the capital barracks were the Imperial family's followers. The Tianfu army, composed of these 2 groups, would be an army that Emperor Changshi, and future emperors could truly rely on. Oh, hang on. I lost my place. Okay, there it is. Sorry. Carrying out action in the open to conceal the hidden plot. When Shu Sheng thought he was eating sand on the front lines, Yan Xiaohan was already in Shu, having finished restructuring the Tianfu army. When Minister Shui at last understood that he had once again been made a fool of by Yan Xiaohan. Yan Xiaohan was already rushing with his elite force onto the battlefield to join the Beiyuan cavalry, which had just seized Luoyang. At this point, Jiang Nan's families had completely lost the advantage. Retaking the Central Plains and uniting North and South was imperative. Even if they pulled Emperor Changxi off the throne now, they would have no way to hold back the local army sending out troops, one after another like bamboo shoots sprouting up after the rain. They certainly couldn't stop the iron heel of the Beiyuan army and the Tianfu army as they flagrantly marched north. At the end of the year, news of victory was pouring in from all over. Everything from the lower reaches of the Yellow River and south had been taken. The Beiyuan cavalry and the Tianfu army had successfully taken Qingling, Lushou, and 3 other locations, closing in on the major target of Yuanshou, where the Tartars and Shi had their main forces stationed. At the turn of the year, the Jiangnan court sent a delivery of provisions and armaments, richly favoring the Tianfu army. There was also a secret letter in the emperor's own hand sending his regards to the Marquis of Jingning. When Fu Shen returned to his camp in the evening, the sky was as dark and heavy as though it was about to snow. He was so frozen that his hands were numb. He lifted the tent flap, but a warm fragrance came right at him. The commander's tent, which ought to have been dark and deserted, was brightly lit. The turtle dove that had occupied the magpie's nest was sitting at the head of the bed reading army dispatches. Hearing movement, he looked over, all smiles. He put down the letters and extended his arms towards Fu Shen. That's so cute. He's just like, hello, I want a hug. With such a person here, the simple and crude tent seemed to have become an immortal palace. His dry, icy hands were held between warm palms. Fu Shen bent down and deliberately pressed his icy cheek to Yan Xiaohan's face. What are you doing here again? Yan Xiaohan said unblushingly, It's almost the new year. How could I leave you alone? I came to warm the Lord Marquis's bed. Fu Shen shook his head and laughed. With a helplessly indulgent, I can't do anything with you, written all over his face, his chin was caught and he was kissed. It was a funny thing to say. In the Tianfu army, from the commander to the ordinary soldiers, practically everyone had made up their minds to cling tightly to the Beiyuan cavalry's leg. Since joining up Luoyang, the Tianfu army had turned into the Beiyuan army's little tail. For one thing, this was because the 2 commanders had a close relationship. For another thing, it was because the Tianfu army, for the most part, came from the capital and its environs. That's I'm going to guess it's like its environment. It had a kind of natural sense of closeness to the Beiyuan army. Besides, Yan Xiaohan's experience in leading troops was still limited, and he regularly needed to have Fu Shen looking out for him. Therefore, when no one would notice, Yan Xiaohan went almost every evening to the Beiyuan army's camp to consult with Fu Shen. Consult. Fu Shen had long ago instructed his bodyguards to let him through. Over time, everyone became accustomed to this. Even Yu Qiaoting, bumping into Yan Xiaohan coming out of Fu Shen's tent in the morning, could greet him with a normal expression and tell him to eat before he left. What are you reading? With his help, Fu Shen removed his armor and changed into casual house clothes, and went to wash his hands in a bronze pan full of hot water. As he dried them, he listened to Yan Xiaohan say, news from court. The Shi and Parhe have sent envoys to Jinling. They want to negotiate peace. Fu Shen sat at the edge of the bed and undid each clasp on his boots in turn. That's about what I would figure. What do they say? With a border running from Qingshou to Lushou, they want to return everything south of it to the court and have everything north governed by the three clans. North and south would leave each other alone and open trade routes. Jiangnan would give the Tartars, Shi and Parhe, several thousands in an annual gift. At this point, Yan Xiaohan gave a soft laugh. And their emperor wishes to become His Majesty's sworn brother. Fu Shen soaked his face in hot water, soaked his feet in hot water, and idly sneered. Ha! Coming on strong. The soldiers are already at their gates. Do they think they've come to attend a market? Yan Xiaohan said, His Majesty won't waver for now, but there are many in court advocating in favor of the peace negotiations, especially the Jiangnan group. They won't want to impoverish the south in support of the north. I'm afraid there will be arguments about this. Let them argue, Fu Shen said with a cold laugh. Truly strange that it isn't the people of the north who get to decide whether the peace talks go forward. It isn't the soldiers campaigning at the front lines. Instead, it's those lords holding steady at the rear who get to give up half the Central Plains by flapping their lips. This goes out beyond daydreaming. Oh, so the reference with the beacon was a reference to King Yu of Western Zhou, who lit the war beacons to make his concubine Bao Si smile, ultimately leading to the downfall of Western Zhou. Oh no. I mean, at least he made her happy, even though it kind of screwed everything up. Oops. Chapter 71. Their beautiful country had fallen into the hands of the foreign enemy. Yeah, if I'm honest, that's hilarious. I agree, Momar's Rover. Yeah, he's like, hi, honey, I'm over here. Oh, ambush. Chapter 71. Their beautiful country had fallen into the hands of the foreign enemy. The barbarians viewed the Han people of the Central Plains as dogs and trash, wantonly pillaging and burning. For the past 2 years, natural and man-made disasters in the north had come in an endless stream. As the army traveled, they often saw villages that had been wrecked by the flames of war, 9 out of 10 houses empty, skeletons exposed to the elements by the road. If they were still going to negotiate a peace under these circumstances, what did the soldiers who had shed blood at the front lines and the common people who had looked south to the royal army until their deaths amount to? Yan Xiaohan walked up to the table and raised his brush to write a few characters of his report. In an even tone, he said, Indeed, the arrow is already on the string. Even if the arguments in Jinling rise to the heavens, they still can't recall the army pressing on the border. The initiative is in our hands now. The southern court has no say in it. There's no need to heed them. At present, surrounding Yuanshou, were the Beiyuan, Tianfu, Jiangnan, and Xiangshou armies. Heading east, there were the troops massed in their own provinces by the military commissioners of Huainan, Jingshu, and Shuishou, apart from the Jiangnan army and the Tianfu army, which normally took their orders from the Jiangnan court. The rest of the military commissioners and local officers had each taken up self-reliance and self-defense before the new court had been established. It was up to the heroes to determine events now. Whoever's fist was the hardest would be the one to speak. However clamorous the cries of the lord in Jiangnan, they wouldn't be as effective as pedants endangering the realm. Pedants. Endangering the realm, Fu Shen lamented insincerely. He stretched out his neck to look at the tabletop. What are you writing so late at night? Yan Xiaohan dropped his brush and turned to pick up a cloth nearby to cover Fu Shen's feet. He picked up the wooden pail and went outside to pour out the water. He casually answered, "Writing a report to the court. It's nothing. Hurry up and lie down. Don't freeze." When he raised the tent flap, a breeze blew in, turning over the pages. Fu Shen hadn't meant to pry, but he couldn't help how good his eyesight was. At a glance, he caught a line of precise, regular script on the page. The moment he saw it clearly, his heart inexplicably missed a beat. He was agitated, but not confused. Rather, he had a feeling of enlightenment, as if a vista had broadened and cleared. There were only a few words in that report. Better fight to the death than negotiate peace. Back when Fu Shen had returned to the capital, Yan Xiaohan had constantly been calling himself crafty and fawning. He had been denounced in speech and writing by all the nation's scholars as the court's dog. But times had changed. When storms had passed, it was easy for moral integrity to alter and loyalty to break. But he was one of a small number of people who had remained standing upright. Now, who would still dare to say that he was a sycophant, who only knew how to curry favor and harm loyal subjects? There were some sounds, and Yan Xiaohan returned from outside. Fu Shen was wrapped in a quilt that had been warmed by body heat. He sighed comfortably and called out, "Meng Gui." Yan Xiaohan was just washing his hands. He turned his head and asked, "What do you want?" "I want you," said Fu Shen. At this unexpected hit to the chest, Yan Xiaohan froze. Then he laughed. He dried his hands, loosened his clothes, and got into bed to lie down next to Fu Shen. "What for?" Fu Shen drew near and kissed the tip of his nose. With justice on his side, he said, "Nothing. I want to show my wife some affection. Can't I?" Oh, I love these two. Yeah. Yan Xiaohan pulled him firmly into his arms and bent his head to find his warm, dry lips, and mock-threateningly bumped him with his head. "Provoking me again? I think you don't want to sleep." Before Fu Shen could put all the honeyed words in his belly to good use, they were held back and turned into indistinct little moans. In the cold winter night, the two of them became increasingly heated as they rolled around, till Yan Xiaohan felt that if they kept grinding against each other like this, he wouldn't be able to hold himself back, and managed to release him. There was sweat on Fu Shen's forehead. Panting, he gave a laugh. "Don't take it from me, my wife, but your vitality is a little excessively firm." "Whose fault is that?" Yan Xiaohan pulled his hand into the quilt and said with a sigh, "My lord Marquis, can't you hurry up and retake the capital? Let me come home and do as I please? If you keep killing without burying the bodies like this, I really won't be able to hold myself back from injuring a loyal subject." Fu Shen let out a low groan and said, gritting his teeth, "Right now, you don't call this doing as you please? Do you want to ascend to heaven?" The long winter night in the last month of the year flew by as quickly as a night in spring. It had snowed in the middle of the night. When Fu Shen woke early in the morning, it was still dark outside, with heaven and earth all cloaked in silver and white. Yan Xiaohan must have gotten up not long ago. Still a lingering warmth on the other side of the bed. Fu Shen propped himself up, slowly clearing his head of sleepiness. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw that the marten coat that had been hanging there was gone. He figured that he had gone back to the Tianfu army's camp, so he draped on his clothes and got out of bed, ready to go to the canteen to get something to eat and patrol the camp while he was at it. I feel like I'm stuttering a lot today. Sorry. Before his feet hit the ground, he heard footsteps at the door. Yan Xiaohan ducked inside and put the big steaming bowl in his hands on the table. With his scalded red fingers, he pinched Fu Shen's earlobe and said, "You really woke up early. I was planning to wake you when I got back." Fu Shen belatedly worked out what was happening. He sat up at the head of the bed and tilted his head back to look at him. "What were you doing first thing in the morning? You didn't return to the camp?" "Why would I?" Yan Xiaohan leaned down and kissed the center of his brow. Warmly, he said, "Have you forgotten what day it is? Happy birthday, Lord Marquise. May you have good fortune and long life." Oh, you remembered his birthday. Well, I know they were saying, like, he didn't really celebrate. He's been through wars. He has a shitty stepmother and kind of, like, doesn't have a great family dynamic. The people he had kind of a relationship are all dead. Or just gone from his life. So only then did Fu Shen remember that today was indeed his birthday. It was just that he was normally so busy with military affairs and that it wasn't a full decade birthday, so he had tossed this fact to the back of his head. Besides, it was a time of emergency. No one was in the mood to celebrate birthdays. It was only Yan Xiaohan who would remember it for him. "Thank you." Fu Shen's throat felt blocked. Perhaps because he had just woken up, he seemed a little baffled. His dictation also seemed distant and stiff. "You've gone to quite some trouble." Looking at his expression that spoke of never having celebrated his birthday, Yan Xiaohan felt both amused and sad. He couldn't resist the itch to stroke his head. "The year before last, you were in Beiyuan, and last year we were apart, one north and one south. This year we've finally managed to be in the same place. I have nothing to give you now, so I prepared a bowl of longevity noodles for you. My handiwork is subpar. Would the Lord Marquis honor me by tasting it?" Oh my god. Oh, they're so cute. "I don't have anything because we're at war, but I made you noodles. Noodles that are a wish for good life, like long life." Oh my god, that's... Oh, this is really wrecking my standards. Fu Shen nodded, his eyes fixed on the tall, slender figure as it went to bring him the noodles, silently thinking to himself, "I don't want anything at all. Having you is enough." Yan Xiaohan wasn't being modest. He had said his handiwork was subpar, and indeed the flavor of the noodles was only average. "Oh, hi, Chi-Chi Kiki. Wanted to stop by and say hi. We'll watch and listen to this later." That sounds perfect. You're gonna have a great time. They're being cute again. They're super sweet this time, but no worries. I'm just glad you came and popped in and said hi. I hope you're doing okay. Even though I have a con next this coming weekend, I am still going to do Thursday live stream. I know last time I took it off, but I wasn't as prepared for this one as I am now. So it'll be normal Thursday. I hope you enjoy it when you listen to this later. All right. I'm going to just restart that paragraph. Yan Xiaohan wasn't being modest. He had said his handiwork was subpar, and indeed the flavor of the noodles was only average. But never mind that it was only subpar. Even if Yan Xiaohan had brought him a bowl of arsenic, Fu Shen would have swallowed it, even batting an eyelash. Oh my god, they're so sweet. Today, the Beiyuan cavalry officers joining Fu Shen on patrol felt an unprecedented pressure. The Marquis of Jingning, who had for the last few days threatened to wait until the enemy was exhausted and sit still while the enemy moved, suddenly seemed to have been provoked by something. While analyzing the situation, he got off track, changing the subject from how to deploy forces in Yuanshou to how to take the capital as soon as possible. He seemed ready to make their heads roll if they couldn't retake the whole nation within 3 months. Xiao Shun poked Yu Qiaoting with his elbow and quietly asked, "Has the general been possessed?" Yu Qiaoting's expression was grave. "As I see it, that Yan has probably fed him another bowl of bewitching potion." Fu Shen shot the two of them a cold look. "We received word from Jiangnan last night. The Tartars and Shi have sent envoys to Jinling, bringing up peace negotiations. They want to split control of north and south, with the line between Qingshou and Lushou as border, and they want to ally with our nation. I think that among those present, none of you is willing to give those wolf cubs money every New Year." All the officers immediately restrained their playfulness, and their expressions turned grim. "As soon as we celebrated the New Year, we move. If we can seize Yuanshou and Xiangshou, the capital will have no protection. Taking back the Central Plains within 3 months isn't an idle boast." Fu Shen put down a map and sternly said, "Gentlemen, the disgrace of the capital's defeat and the northern frontier falling to the hands of the enemy ought now to be wiped out by the Beiyuan cavalry in person." New Year's Eve came once a year. Though the world had fallen on hard times and there was desolation throughout the north, sporadic firecrackers still went up at times in the cities. For the majority of the Han people, however badly off they were, they still had to celebrate the New Year. Outside the cities, however, beneath the pitch-black canopy of heaven, were arrayed a multitude of stern, warlike cavalrymen. One wondered what splendor and magnificence there was in Jiangnan on this night. The officers of the 4 armies gathered in the empty space in front of their camps to make final deployments ahead of the battle. When they were finished, Yan Shouhan called over a bodyguard and gave each person a bowl of hot wine. He raised his head and said, "This wine is a send-off for your gentlemen. May heaven bless our armies and grant us victory in this battle." The officers raised their bowls, making crisp clinking noises in the midair. Together they said, "To a speedy victory!" The strong liquor went down their throats and set all the blood in their bodies boiling. The others returned to their respective armies. Only Yan Shouhan hung back. Fu Shen seemed to have worked out his plans. Raising his eyebrows, he said with a laugh, "Do you want to say something to me in private?" There was a faint redness at the corners of his eyes from the alcohol. Smiling, his features didn't seem as cold and hard as usual, instead bearing a trace of tipsy affection. Yan Shouhan knew very well that the time wasn't right and the setting wasn't right, but his heartstrings still trembled involuntarily. He hated to see Fu Shen go into battle, but there was no denying that, in fact, this was the look of his he most admired. Yeah. People, he likes a man in uniform, what can he say? It's New Year's Eve. I ought to say something auspicious. Through the blustering north wind, Yan Shouhan distantly raised his cup to him. "I hope our country will have stability, prosperity, and peace." Fu Shen was slightly startled. Then he lowered his eyelids. He seemed to be sighing and also to be laughing. He raised his cup to return the salute. His voice wasn't loud, but through the wind, Yan Shouhan heard every word clearly. "I hope to be with you for many years and grow old together." Having said this, he drank the dregs of wine in his cup in one gulp and urged his horse into the boundless night. Okay. I hear myself getting nasally, so I'm going to blow my nose real quick. Oy. Gotta maybe find like I know voice actors use like throat spray or something. Maybe that'll smooth it out a little. Add that to the Amazon list along with osmanthus candy. Okay. Chapter 72. In the second year of Changxi, at the start of the new year, Han forces attacked Yuanshou by night, scoring a major victory against the barbarian forces, beheading many thousands and capturing over 30 Tartar and Shi military officers, government officials, and nobles. In the second month, Huainan's 3 armies retook Xiangshou. At the end of the third month, the 7 armies joined into a crushing force in Shuoshou. Yes, Shuoshou, which was at the extreme south of the capital's environs. Not long after, with Fu Shen taking the lead, the 7 armies of officers gathered in one place to discuss the division of forces for the campaign north and the retaking of the capital. Over the course of these events, all the military commissioners had openly or covertly probed Fu Shen's intentions. The Battle of the Capital was right in front of them, but after the battle, what would they do, and where would they do it? Would they continue as separate forces or return military power and submit to the court, become idle nobles by merit? Though all the military commissioners silently acknowledged that they were fighting on behalf of the court, no one wanted to be working for nothing. They certainly didn't want to be the bridge destroyed after it was crossed, the donkey killed as soon as it left the millstone. There had been too many object lessons in the year before last. Their faith in the court was limited. At present, it was Fu Shen, the first to raise troops in support of the emperor, who had the greatest power to rally supporters. In the middle of the 4th month, the army's deployments were fixed. The Tartar, Shi, and Parhe envoys went around the Jinling court and went straight outside the city to request to see the Beiyuan commander. Once again, they brought up peace negotiations. The envoy promised that the 3 clans would withdraw their troops from the capital and retreat outside the pass. The 2 sides would use the Great Wall as a border and not attack each other. They also requested that Great Zhou give increased annual payments to the 3 clans and permit them to enter the passes every winter and spring to herd horses. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. On the 15th of the 4th month, a few days before meeting with the foreign envoys, Fu Shen and Yan Xiaohan found some leisure amid their busy affairs to go to Golden Terrace in the capital's outskirts. When the capital had been breached by the allied armies, the Tartar and Shi soldiers, to vent their feelings and to humiliate Great Zhou's imperial family, had burned this place to barren land. Ooh. The towering halls had been reduced to rubble. The splendor of previous days had turned into a scene of devastation as far as their eye could see. Though Fu Shen had been prepared, when they truly came near, he was still stunned when he saw this scene. In a daze, he leapt from horseback. When he landed, his legs were a little weak, and he didn't find his footing. He was pulled into the arms of Yan Xiaohan, who charged up from behind. Jing Yuan? It's fine. Fu Shen patted his hand and jaggedly said, I'll go in and have a look. This place had a very particular meaning for Fu Shen. If not, he wouldn't have brought Yan Xiaohan here to make their bows. According to his memories of the past, Fu Shen found where Qinling Palace had been, made a few circles, and with difficulty determined the location of his father and grandfather's portraits. He raised the hems of his robes and slowly knelt amid the smashed tiles and charred wood all over the ground. Yan Xiaohan followed him in silence and also knelt. Fu Shen faced emptiness and lowered himself, firmly and loudly kowtowing 3 times, but he said nothing. A century of glory utterly destroyed in a fire like this. Of the yellowing portraits, not a single one remained. just like the brave souls who had passed away. They had lingered reluctantly, but in the end they had floated away in all directions with the wind. Were they still protecting Great Chou, protecting the Beiyuan cavalry? Yan Chouhan saw the corners of Fu Shen's eyes redden. In those long and narrow, beautiful eyes, there was wavering and perplexity that he had rarely seen. Yan Chouhan pondered briefly, then stood and walked a few steps forward, then went down on one knee beside him. Softly, he said, "General, is there a weight on your mind? Would you like me to ease it for you?" Fu Shen looked up. There was still a glimmer of unshed tears in his eyes. "How did you know?" "Well, you haven't said it. I am your closest kin, my dear General. Normally, I could tell." Yan Chouhan gently wiped the corners of his eyes and his temple. "It's all written in your eyes." Fu Shen lowered his eyelids. He seemed to be laughing, but also appeared to be sighing. He said, "It isn't a weight on my mind. It's a deranged thing, a revolt against orthodoxy, which will be universally condemned." "Oh?" Yan Chouhan raised his eyebrows. "What a coincidence! Isn't one of the foremost rebels against orthodoxy an expert in being universally condemned right in front of you?" When he had brought this up, there was nothing more Fu Shen could say about it. He simply found a clean place to sit and got into position to have a long talk sitting knee to knee. "Now that you ask me, I don't even know where to start. Do you still remember Cang Guang?" Yan Chouhan pursed his lips like a child and said, "Isn't that Gu Shanlua's teacher? He made a request of you, and you made me intercede on behalf of that Cang Guang." Fu Shen was speechless. "Truly amazing, Lord Yan. Have you been ruminating on this old jealousy all this time?" "See what you've said there, Lord Marquis." Yan Chouhan's eyes curved slyly. He drew near and said mysteriously, "Wouldn't you know best of all how amazing I am, Lord Marquis?" Fu Shen didn't answer. "Don't disturb me." Not knowing whether to laugh or cry, he pinched Yan Chouhan's cheek. Then, composing himself, he said, "To business. After the attack in Chingsha Gap, I made my peace with certain things, but there were still some things I was unwilling to accept. The Beiyuan cavalry's position is too difficult. We spend our lives fighting on behalf of Great Chou, but in the end we become a splinter in the eye, a thorn in the flesh, prickling the emperor so much that he spends all day considering how he can kill me, kill us. I fret every day then. This generation's sovereign doesn't trust us, and the next generations wouldn't trust me either. Since time immemorial, how long has it taken to produce a wise and capable ruler? My lifetime won't amount to 100 years. How long will it take? What if I die before it happens?" Yan Chouhan nodded. "Indeed, it's better to believe in yourself than in others. Then there are only two paths. Either make yourself king or command the emperor and his nobles." Fu Shen laughed in spite of himself. "I have no hankering to be emperor, and I don't have the makings of it." Yan Chouhan knew that he wasn't joking. Had Fu Shen truly had that thought, he could have formed his own faction when he was in Gangshou, or even earlier, during the Yun Tai court. The imperial decree arranging their marriage would have been a ready-made reason. But he hadn't. When a gentleman conducts himself in society, there are actions he must take, and actions he must not. When Fu Shen said something, he would put it into practice up to the hilt. Later, during the Kuangshan Academy case, I happened to come upon Cheng Guang's essays from the Shu Mei Temple. I thought they were quite a revelation, Fu Shen said. The nation belongs to all and is not the private property of a single family. To say it is to offend the whole of society, but thinking closely, it's not without sense. Fu Shen had read Cheng Guang's essay and felt that while this old gentleman was advanced in age, his heart was wild, carrying a beautiful dream to eat enough in one bite to grow fat. The Kuangshan Academy's teaching had seemed like pure fantasy at the time, and even now they still seemed very strong. But through the writing, some of the old gentleman's hope hidden inside it had happened to subtly accord with Fu Shen's ideas. This was the so-called third path he had been looking for. Yan Xiaohan felt that he had dimly groped his way to the edges, but he still couldn't seize the main point. You mean? Fu Shen considered repeatedly, and then, with the utmost caution, gave a two-worded answer. Shared rule. The generals who guarded the border, the military commissioners who held troops all over the nation, the senior administrators who had enlightened and governed, the ministers who gave frank criticism and aided in ruling the nation. These people ought to have been crying out and busying themselves for the sake of the common people. But instead they were bound by the emperor's power, bowing their heads and submitting to a single most revered family. Fu Shen's hopes for a sagacious ruler had long since been discouraged. He had never had the thought of taking that place for himself. Obscurely, there seemed to be some commandment binding generation after generation of heroes and men of ambition, prosperity and decline, rise and fall. All seemed to have their fixed terms. Fu Shen vaguely perceived this heavenly law, but he had no way to express it, until he had inadvertently leafed through essays from Shu Mei Temple, and the sentence, "The nation belongs to all those who live in the nation." It had laid bare his perplexity, and the hazy thought in his mind had finally broken through the earth and grown into a new shoot. What was shared rule? All citizens within the nation's border, taking part in state power. Important affairs of state, enumerated in full and put to public opinion to be resolved. But he wasn't absolutely certain. He didn't know whether this was fine timber or a poisoned weed. After hearing him out, Yan Xiaohan did not speak for a long time. His attitude wasn't actually all that important. Yet democracy. It vaguely meant, basically. It does sound a lot like democracy, which is pretty advanced thinking for that time period. Very radical. After hearing him out, Yan Xiaohan didn't speak for a long time. His attitude wasn't all that important, or rather, it wasn't more important than anyone else's. But Fu Shen, knowing very well that disapproval and incomprehension were normal responses, still felt perturbed in spite of himself because of his silence. So, Yan Xiaohan said confusedly, the reason you made me help you rescue Cheng Guang really wasn't because you were testing me, but because of this? Fu Shen didn't answer. Sometimes he really wanted to open up Yan Xiaohan's head and have a look at what the hell was actually in there. Seeing him speechless, Yan Xiaohan laughed heartlessly. You're not nervous, are you, Lord Marquis? He ridiculed. What will you do if I say you're indulging in wild fantasies? What would you do if I say you're a heretic? Of course, Fu Shen wouldn't do anything to him. If Yan Xiaohan didn't like it, then at worst, after taking the capital, he would resign his post on account of illness, abandon all his outstanding achievements, and retire into seclusion with Yan Xiaohan, putting affairs of state out of sight and out of mind, letting them all mess around however they liked. I mean, dude, you have been fighting for years. I kind of just hope that for you. Like, let the man retire. There was nothing in this world that Fu Shen wouldn't part with apart from Yan Xiaohan. Nothing, Fu Shen expressionlessly, poking his face. Do you think I could cast you off because of a thing like this? Yan Xiaohan fell onto him, laughing. Fu Shen, hugging his heavy wife, didn't know what he had to be so pleased about. He was just about to remind him to have some dignity when he heard Yan Xiaohan say, I think it's great. What? Said Fu Shen. The retired emperor said that you are subjects loyal to the nation, not to the ruler. Yan Xiaohan stopped smiling and earnestly said, It isn't the least bit surprising to me that you would say such a thing, because you are Fu Jingyuan. You've never changed. No matter what your plans, go ahead and carry them out to the full. Even if you fail, I'll still be with you. Husband and wife are one, sharing in glory and disgrace. In future ages, your name and mine will always be written together. I think that's great. There's nothing better. Fu Shen's mind was shaken. His countenance showed visible emotion. He silently hugged Yan Xiaohan, squeezing very hard, as if afraid he would run away. He understood that he would never have the luck to meet a better person than him. After a long time, Yan Xiaohan suddenly struggled free slightly and indicated for him to turn his head. Look. Fu Shen looked in the direction he was pointing and saw beneath a blackened and decaying pillar, in a crack in a brick, there was a tiny wildflower swaying in the wind, petals extended, leaves jade green. Amid the disorder, it seemed incredibly frail and likely to wither, but it was also the only thriving bit of light amid all the burnt-out cinders. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. By tacit agreement, they said nothing, only pressed their foreheads against each other and gently touched their lips together. Dude, I would have lost it if that was like a double blossom, like the one that got thrown between them and then gifted back. But I imagine that'd be too coincidental. The most thorough conflagration was waiting for the next year's spring breezes. On the 18th of the 4th month, the officers of the 7 armies met with the 3 clans' envoys beneath Golden Terrace. This innovative location had been selected by Fu Shen, and it got excellent results. The officers of all the armies, on seeing the envoys come for peace negotiations, didn't show them a trace of goodwill. A trace of a not very natural expression flashed over the Shi envoy's face. But after all, they were the ones who had come to sue for peace. They had to pretend they didn't notice. They forced themselves to sit. The 3 clans had each sent a lead envoy with an assistant envoy. Yan Xiaohan sat at Fu Shen's right hand, looking on. He found that the Tartar envoy seemed to be carrying himself with arrogance. The Shi envoy was the slickest. The Parhe envoy spoke very little. Even when he spoke, it was to echo the words of the Shi envoy. It was evident at a glance how relations stood between the clans. The Shi and Parhe were wild dogs. They only wanted to tear enough flesh from great show. The Tartars were wolves. They had an implacable hatred for great show. Even if, this time, they temporarily endured humiliation and bent their heads, they would still stage a comeback in the future. Bottomless greed and the wild ambitions of a wolf cub. Rather than saying they were here for peace negotiations, it would be better to say they were in their death struggles. They must have taken an accurate read of the Jiangnan's court's attitude and had come here to carry out a daylight robbery. Fu Shen had nothing to say to the Tartar envoy. Afraid he wouldn't be able to suppress his anger, he had Yu Qiaoting deal with him in his place. When it came to the Shi envoy, he suddenly recalled something and said to the short envoy, I forgot to ask, since your Yin Tu Khan wishes to sue for peace, how does he intend to demonstrate it? The Shi envoy froze. unsure where he was going with this. Yan Xiaohan put in a timely word. Why would you ask that, Lord Marquis? I have heard that Yin Tu Khan has always been courteous and hospitable, Fu Shen said. When I was married, he went out of his way to send an anonymous wedding gift. What? Said Yan Xiaohan. A box of bloody Eastern pearls. Fu Shen narrowed his eyes, murderous intent gleaming within them. I so appreciate him taking the trouble. The Shi envoy was locked in place by his gaze. He instantly began to tremble incessantly. His heart was about to jump out of his throat. Quickly, he said, a misunderstanding. It must have been a misunderstanding. But Fu Shen suddenly laughed. Come. At his laugh, everyone's gazes converged on him. From an attendant behind him, Fu Shen took a bowl of uncooked rice and brought it in front of him. In front of all the envoys and officers, he slowly overturned and emptied it. Let us be up front with each other. If Yin Tu wishes to sue for peace, then he can make a show of good faith. A head for each grain of rice. He can start the count with his own family. Once he has enough, I will immediately withdraw our troops. If he can't make up the number, I will bring this bowl of rice to his grave myself next year. The snow-white rice spilled, making a shushing sound. There was dead silence inside the tent. The Shi envoy was nearly angry enough to attack him on the spot. This is a scandal! That's impossible! You go too far! Yan Xiaohan darkly said, You haven't even tried. How do you know it's impossible? Why not go and try it first? The other two clans' envoys treated this as nothing to do with them and didn't make a sound. Oh yeah, they are just too cute. The Shi envoy helplessly realized he was no longer faced with the Jiangnan ministers, playing up their own positions and putting on an act of kindliness. Here, there was only a crowd of generals who had trampled through mountains of corpses and seas of blood, had killed their way to the capital. When they had sat down, the blood on the tips of their swords had yet to dry. Now you remember that you ought to reason with me? Too late, Fu Shen said coldly. Go back and tell Yin Tu that starting from when he provoked me and launched a sneak attack on Liangkou Pass, our fates as enemies were sealed. A hatred on behalf of my nation, a heavy debt of blood. Unless he dies, this will not end. Bastard. The Shi envoy jumped to his feet and was just about to attack when the sounds of several swords being drawn from their sheaths abruptly came from behind him. Snow-bright sword glare dazzled the eyes. There was a chill at his neck. On Yan Xiaohan's face appeared a fake smile, very familiar to the envoy when he had seen it on the faces of the Jiangnan officials. Since the talks have failed, we will see each other on the battlefield. Gentlemen, show them the door. This meeting had always been headed for a collapse of talks. The only outcome Fu Shen could accept was the three clans going back where they had come from. The further they went, the better. With hundreds of thousands of the army's troops in Shuzhou and victory assured, the military commissioners would have had to go insane to agree to the Tartars' envoys' terms, which seemed to be yielding but were in fact an attempt to use a small advantage to gain a greater one. The three clans' envoys left in a hurry with their tails between their legs. Soon only their own people remained in the tent. Xiangshou's military commissioner, Wang Shiqi, seeing that there was nothing here to deal with, was about to stand and leave the table when suddenly Fu Shen at the head of the table said, Not so fast, gentlemen. I have something else to say. The first song had been sung. This fine opera has just begun. Right, 1 second. Okay. Chapter 73. The 18th day of the 4th month in the 2nd year of Changxi was a day certain to remain forever in the history books. With the Beiyuan cavalry's commander-in-chief Fu Shen initiating, the Tianfu army's representative Yan Xiaohan holding the brush, and the joint signatures of Huainan's military commissioner Yu Changfeng, Xiangshou's military commissioner Wang Shiqi, Jingshou's military commissioner Sheng Hongfeng, Xiu Shao's military commissioner Feng Guo, and the commander of the new Jiangnan army Xiao Shicheng, all the generals raised a memorial to the throne entitled Request to Establish New Laws Expanding the Yanning Hall Assembly. This memorial was also known as the Golden Terrace Memorial. Put together from the collective views of the 7 army officials, it contained 12 articles. Number 1. Expel the barbarians, retake the capital, and restore the Shao dynasty. Number 2. Give up no territory, pay no tribute, make no political marriages. Number 3. After North and South are united, all armies will fall under central administration. All military commissioners will retain their right to self-defense. Number 4. We request an expansion of the seats in the Yanning Hall Assembly, permitting each area to select and send a military and a civil official to enter the assembly, and the Border Defense Forces to send 2 military officials to enter the assembly, to participate in handling state affairs. Number 5. We request that trade routes in the north be opened with specialized forces to guard them. ... Number 12. We request that new laws be promulgated and issued for enforcement throughout the empire, commanding those inside and out to comply, to be administered as a benefit, setting an example for posterity. This memorial to the throne made huge waves in the Jiangnan court, enraging nearly all civil officials. The denouncements to the memorial were unending. Assembling a personal army as a challenge to the government and abusing power to the detriment of the nation were the lighter accusations. Many old ministers lined up at the palace doors prepared to expostulate with their deaths, afraid that once His Majesty agreed, the nation would fall apart, and the world would never again know a day of peace. But some wicked imp copied out the contents of this earth-shaking memorial to the throne and leaked it to the public. Now the common people also fell into turmoil. The military commissioners who nominally supported the Jiangnan court began to communicate privately. Evidently, they were moved by the contents of the memorial. In comparison to the fiercely opposed ministers, the common people's view on this were not entirely censorious. Since the capital had fallen in battle, people who wished to retake the Central Plains and unify North and South had not been in the minority. Tribulations brought on introspection. When the beautiful dream of a wealthy and powerful dynasty had been ground beneath the iron heel of foreign invaders, the imperial family had built a little court in the south amid the storm, but had been unable to gather an army for a northern campaign. Only because Fu Shen had made a public appeal and the various military commissioners had deployed troops, was there any hope for the nation's revitalization. Many people, while they didn't say it out loud, began involuntarily in their hearts to have doubts about the court and the emperor. When the empire shook, it was often a time of contention among new ideas and new schools of thought. Though there was no lack of heresies among them, sometimes there would be voices so loud that even the deaf could hear. It was precisely on this rejuvenating east wind that the Kuangshan Academy emerged as a new force. The wise gentleman Cheng Guang's idea that everyone has a say in the nation was especially in vogue. The nation belongs to all and is not the private property of a single family. The rule and disorder of the nation do not mark the rise and fall of a single clan, but are the anxieties and joys of all the nation's people. The calamity of the smashing of the nation's territory had overturned a dynasty, but amid the ashes of desolation, the stars were still burning in the sky. All the necessary conditions were present. The point of transformation was finally at hand. Just as the army in the north hung back and Jin Ling's ministers argued until their heads spun, with no one willing to yield or compromise and the situation fallen into a deadlock, the military commissioners of Jiangnan, Lingnan, and Fujian suddenly presented a joint memorial to the court, asking Emperor Chengxi to approve the memorial presented by the 7 northern armies. The commander of the East Sea Navy followed suit soon after, also submitting a memorial. Soon after that, Jiangnan's military commissioner also sent the retired emperor's decree, pronouncing that Emperor Changxi could canvass public sentiment, decide at your own discretion. So he's like, not touching it. Up to you, boo-boo. Hu Shen hadn't expected that Jiangnan's 3 military commissioners would stand up to speak in their favor so soon. He had planned on exerting pressure on Jingling with the retaking of the capital. If he dragged it out for a month, he was convinced that His Majesty would agree. This was better. The overall situation was already decided. Even the retired emperor had spoken in support. It was only a matter of time before Emperor Changxi gave the nod. Truly strange. He looked at Yan Shaohan in total confusion and asked, "What kind of potion did you feed them in the first year of Changxi that it hasn't worn off yet?" In this aspect, Yan Shaohan actually understood things better than him. This memorial has only advantages for the military commissioners and no disadvantages. Besides, they aren't the only ones facilitating this. There are also the wealthy merchants behind them. You spend all your time in the north and know little about the circumstances in Jiangnan. Jiangnan's business is prosperous. Jiangnan and Huainan, the wealthiest places in the empire. Fujian and Lingnan have a flourishing sea trade, especially after His Majesty succeeded to the throne with only half the nation left to him. In order to expand its financial resources and increase revenue, the court not only didn't beat down merchants, it gave them extra encouragement to expanding trade routes. And the military commissioners, in order to keep soldiers, have to treat the merchants still better. In this way, the wealthy merchants have become the court's greatest support. They also want to climb to the next level, but there is only a single path to becoming an official. If in the future the military commissioners can select and send military and civil ministers to Yanning Hall, the major merchants will have representation in the central administration. Their own interests are heavily bound up in this. Of course they are willing to support it. All the small and quiet changes assembled, and at last began a huge wave that could carry boats or capsize them. On the 4th day of the 5th month, Emperor Changxi sent an edict to Xiaoshou permitting their memorial. In the 7th month, the capital was retaken. The remaining Tartar and Shi forces were beaten back to Miyu. The Beiyuan cavalry continued north to eliminate the remaining enemy troops. In the 9th month, Beiyuan's 3 passes came back into the hands of the Beiyuan cavalry. The line of the northern frontier was reestablished. That same year, there was internal strife in Parhe. The insurrectionist army compelled their original ruler to capitulate. They were willing to pledge allegiance to Great Shou, submit to its rule, and pay tribute, forever be a vassal state. In the 12th month, Emperor Changxi had arrived in the capital. On New Year's Day the next year, he received the good wishes of all the ministers in Taiji Hall, rewarded all the generals, conferred upon Sun Hui, the son of the Empress in Central Palace, the title of Crown Prince, and promulgated a set of assembly laws. I'm going to guess that's like he promoted or set forth. In the spring of the third year of Changxi, Fu Shen was promoted Duke of Jing and conferred the additional title of General, Pillar of the Nation. While he was the initiator of the new system, he had no attachment to power and position. As soon as he received his titles, pleading a relapse of his leg problems, he submitted a memorial requesting to resign his post as Beiyuan commander. Back when the Beiyuan army had retaken the 3 passes in the 9th month of the previous year, it had been reconstructed by Fu Shen. The army was separated into 4 parts to defend the 4 provinces of Jishou, Pingshou, Beiyuan, and Yuanshou, commanded respectively by the 4 high generals of Beiyuan. Fu Shen no longer led troops and devolved the bulk of his military authority to Yu Qiaoting. When the memorial to the throne had first been submitted, the Beiyuan cavalry had been considered as a single army unit. Now, after being split up, according to the new laws, 4 generals each amounted to the military commissioner of a province. Oh, that's smart. Emperor Changxi's head simply ached. Fu Shen hadn't stopped at asking to resign. He expanded Beiyuan's assembly members from 2 to 8. Ruler and minister went back and forth for half a day and ultimately hammered out it. Each army of the 4 Beiyuan's provinces would send 1 person to the assembly. Apart from that, while Fu Shen wouldn't be commanding troops, he would still join the assembly as the Beiyuan army's commander-in-chief. The Tianfu army joined the Imperial Guards, and Yan Xiaohan joined the assembly as representative of the Tianfu army. At this point, the 8 provinces at the northern border, the 5 provinces of the Central Plains, the 5 provinces of the south, 1 province of Xinan, the East Sea Navy, the Tianfu army, and the original old ministers from Jinling, 48 assembly ministers in all, became the central authority of Great Shao's new court. The fledgling form of the new system was emerging, quietly getting onto the right track. Everything seemed to be developing in the best direction that it could be expected. Apart from Xinan. Commander Prince Siping Duan Gaohong had been the first to bring up self-defense, and he had suited action to word. Since then, he had no further contact of any sort with the Central Plains. Whenever everyone else had been busy with battles and power struggles, with hardly even the time to look after themselves, no one had had the time to attend to what his intentions actually were. Now the emperor had restored the dynasty, the new system had just been put into effect, and an era of peace and prosperity was about to be ushered in. But there had still been no activity or word from Xinan. Emperor Changxi had sent an envoy to negotiate with Xinan, but he hadn't even seen Duan Gaohong. Little by little, Xinan's attitude became self-evident. Commander Prince Xiping had turned against them. He was planning to oppose the court to the bitter end. Stubborn old man. With the nation's territory missing its corner in the eyes of Emperor Changxi, whose vanity had been fostered by uniting North and South, it became a fishbone caught in his throat. In late spring and early summer, 3 rainstorms fell in the capital in succession. Fu Shen's old complaints acted up, and he asked for leave to recuperate at home. Yan Xiaohan followed suit. He insisted on saying that his old affliction from Jingshu was also acting up. He also asked for leave. He's like, he did promise I'm never leaving you again, basically. Fu Shen, of course, knew that his so-called old affliction wasn't any proper ailment, but the 2 of them had spent nearly 2 years racing around without pause. Now that things had finally calmed down, they ought to be making up for the debt of affection and embrace. Considered like this, he figured Yan Xiaohan could do as he liked. On a certain day in the 6th month, the 2 of them woke from a midday nap. Those are the best. Midday naps are amazing. In the coolness coming from a bucket of ice, they were fooling around and splitting fruits on a daybed. The butler walked in quietly and, standing outside, reported through the screen. Master, there is someone here from the court. His Majesty has summoned the Duke of Jing for an audience. Yan Xiaohan's expression immediately turned unhappy. It's such a hot day. What if you get heat stroke? Don't go. Do you think everyone is as finicky as you? Fu Shen plucked a grape and stopped his mouth with it. He rolled over, got out of bed, and put on his shoes. Stop groaning. I'm going. However vigorously Yan Xiaohan cried out, he still couldn't cling to his whip and not let him go. He gloomily bit down and got a mouthful of icy grape juice. Unexpectedly, the next moment, the person who said he was leaving suddenly leaned down and drew near. The tip of his tongue swiftly drew a circle on his lips, flirtatiously and dissolutely stealing a taste. With a smile, he said, "So sweet." Yan Xiaohan said, "You..." Fu Shen raised his eyebrows. Not without mockery, he said, "Lord, I've already paid your illegal toll fee. Can't you let me go now?" The old palace in the capital already had centuries of history. Though it had been renovated several times, it hadn't changed overall. The old buildings had a natural quiet to them. Even if it was the hottest part of summer outside, it would still be very tranquil and cool in the depths of the palace. But the coolness now seemed to seep into the cracks in your bones. With the accompaniment of Emperor Changxi's stormy face, Fu Shen's rheumatic legs dimly began to ache. Oh, that's the worst. I'll take pain over arthritis pain. Because it's like a buzzing under your skin. It sucks. Your Majesty, the North has been freshly calmed. The people urgently need to recuperate and rebuild. The court's new system has only just begun to be put into practice. Forgive me for being blunt, but this is not a good time to deploy troops. The problem of Shinan can be put aside for the time being. It will not be too late to discuss it when the court has replenished its strength. Emperor Changxi snorted. His expression was grim. He clearly hadn't taken his words to heart. Fu Shen had been completely unprepared for the current situation. He knew that Emperor Changxi had sent an envoy to Shinan, but he didn't know that Duan Gaohong had angered His Majesty to this degree. He had come in under the scorching sun, and before the sweat had evaporated from his brow, Emperor Changxi's words hit him right in the face. Commandery Prince Xiping is going to revolt one of these days. Xiping, sorry. Minister Fu, I wish to hand you the banner of raising the troops to deal with this rebel. Fu Shen had to listen carefully to work out what had happened. According to the old system, the 5th and 6th months states paid their tributes. For the past couple of years, the court had been busy with battle and hadn't had time to attend to this. But this time, the legitimate court had been restored. On New Year's Day, the envoys of several foreign nations had come to pay their respects at court. And in recent days, some tributes to the court had straggled into the capital. This ought to have been the cause for celebration, but Emperor Changxi had been hung up on Shinan's lately, and he had deliberately examined the list of gifts submitted by the Ministry of Rites. He wouldn't have known without looking, but once he looked, he found that the 3 vessel states bordering on Shinan, Anan, Shenla, and Lin Yi, seemed to have arranged it between themselves. They hadn't come in person on New Year's Day, and their tributes hadn't come either. Emperor Changxi was very upset. He ordered the Ministry of Rites officials to closely investigate what had happened. But before the Ministry of Rites special envoy could set out, an envoy from the 3 nations had belatedly arrived with a diplomatic note from their governments. The diplomatic note was written with majesty and grandeur, but it contained only one thought. The three nations wish to rescind their vassal relationships with Great Show and stand on an even footing, no longer submit to Great Show or pay tribute to it. It's pretty ballsy right there. These 3 blows stabbed Emperor Chengshi directly in his sore spot. He had already been displeased with the business of Commandery Prince Xiping. Now that the 3 nations had come up with this, if one said that Duan Gaohong hadn't been egging them on, who would believe it? To Emperor Chengshi, all of these things seemed to be connected. Fu Shen hadn't previously thought that Emperor Chengshi was an obstinate person. Perhaps this was a mistaken impression Yan Xiaohan had given him. Because of this, he still held out hope that he could move him with reason and sentiment. Permit me to report, Your Majesty. Anan and the other nations taking this move is indeed unthinkable, but it is not necessarily directly connected to Shinan. It had been some years since the court has had dealings with the other nations. There is no knowing yet whether there are other secrets involved. If we rashly open hostilities without verifying the situation, it will be a loss to the humane and just air of this court. I hope that Your Majesty will reconsider and postpone this action. That sounds pretty logical to me, honestly. Minister Fu, Emperor Chengshi suddenly said coldly, do you think that we have not been sufficiently lenient and forbearing towards Commandery Prince Xiping? Fu Shen quickly replied, I would not dare to think such a thing. When the military commissioners wanted military power, wanted to defend themselves, wanted to join the assembly, we agreed to it all, Emperor Chengshi said. If Shinan returns to the Central Plains, it will receive the same treatment. Why is he unwilling? Fu Shen snuck a glance at Emperor Chengshi, his face like deep water, and sighed inwardly. He had a premonition that another storm was about to break out. He's like, God damn it, I just fixed this shit. Really? I just want to have good times with my wife. While Duan Gaohong couldn't be said to have an implacable hatred for the imperial family, probably he wouldn't bow his head and submit again to anyone with the family name Sun for the rest of his life. It was only that Fu Shen knew the secrets of the 2 sides now. Secrets behind this, while others didn't know. From the deadlock between the 2 sides now, it did indeed appear that Commandery Prince Xiping was unwilling to be controlled by the Emperor, was preparing to set himself up as king and revolt. Duao Gaohong has been managing Xiping for many years. He calls himself the Prince of Xiping. When there was chaos in the Central Plains, he calmly kept on playing local despot in Sinan. We could tolerate all this. As Emperor Chengshi spoke, he finally broke out in true anger. Banging on a table, he said, We have sent envoys to Sinan over and over, afforded him simple dignity. But what about him? He has put our dignity beneath his heel and ground it into the earth. Fu Shen had no answer to give. He could only say, Calm your anger, Your Majesty. With a sneer, Emperor Chengshi said, We have it worked out now. Duan Gaohong holds the little favors of the court in contempt. He is meant to rebel for a long time, guarding Shinan, gathering his strength, then allying with the 3 nations. When the time came, he would be able to set himself up as king, dominate the region, stand on an equal footing with Great Shao. Nurturing a tiger invites calamity, he murmured quietly to himself. Truly, this is what it means to nurture a tiger and invite calamity. Dude, you weren't even the one fighting. Calm your tits. Your Majesty, after a brief silence and repeated consideration, Fu Shen at last spoke to urge him. Commandery Prince Xiping, there is no need for you to continue, Minister Fu. Emperor Changshi said heavily. We are aware that he once served under the previous generation's Duke of Ying and is a former subordinate of your Beiwan army. Think carefully, Minister Fu. Do not harm the loyalty and righteousness of the Beiwan army for the sake of a traitor and usurper. Them be fighting words, buddy. Fu Shen's face immediately stiffened, then quickly recovered an expressionless look. He bowed and said, "I will closely abide by your Majesty's instructions. I will take my leave now." The sunlight outside was all-consuming. Fu Shen walked out with a chill in his heart and was hit by a wave of heat. His temples instantly began to ache as though prickled by needles. The walls of the palace were dazzlingly red. After a few steps, he ran into a red-robed official even more garish than the walls. When their gazes met, both of them froze. This was the Ministry of Appointments, Xu Shang, Lord Shu, who had, despite never having crossed swords with him directly, had accumulated quite deep rancor against Fu Shen for all kinds of reasons. In fact, Xu Shang wasn't actually old, and he didn't seem elderly. It was only that contrasted with the elegant and handsome General Fu, there was a bit of unspeakable haggardness about him. Neither of them spoke, leaving only awkwardness between them. Finally, Xu Shang saluted him, and Fu Shen returned the civility with a nod of his head. The two of them coldly brushed past each other. When he exited the palace gates, the carriage from home that had come to pick him up was waiting outside. Before Fu Shen could get near it, a page cooling in the shade beneath an nearby tree, I don't know why I said empty, that's weird, nearby tree suddenly ran up in front of him and, with a nimble bow, said, "Greetings, Lord Duke." The carriage driver, seeing him waylaid, jumped down and was about to go over, but was stopped at a distance by a gesture from Fu Shen. He lowered his head and asked the page, "What is it?" "My master ordered me to wait here for you and invite you to come to the Jinghe building for a drink this evening." Page respectfully presented a name card with both hands. "This is my master's name card. He said that you would understand when you saw it." Fu Shen took a glance and immediately saw the words Kuangshan Academy, and he immediately understood. He put the name card away in his sleeve unflappably and nodding agreement said, "Understood. Return and tell your master that it would be impolite of me to decline such a courteous invitation." All right, we're on to our last chapter of the night. Chapter 74. The Jinghe building had a long-standing reputation, and its Yanshou cuisine was the finest in the capital. When Fu Shen came... Oh my god. Oh, our vinegar jar is going to be acting up when he's like, "Excuse me, he didn't come home. He went out to dinner with a man. Oh, he gonna be in trouble." The Jinghe building had a long-standing reputation, and its Yanshou cuisine was the finest in the capital, especially because it's the finest in the capital. You're gonna be mad. When Fu Shen came in, there was already someone waiting in the private room. Gu Shanlue was dressed in casual clothing. He stood to welcome him. "Here you are, General. Please come in." Last time, during the send-off outside the city, Gu Shanlue had still been a minor censor with little manpower resources. Following the tumult of war, he had been put into quite an important position by Emperor Changxi in Jiangnan, promoted to senior official of the court of censorate, ranking as one of the 9 high ministers in Yanning Hall. After returning to the capital, he had remained in control of the court of the censorate, controlling impeachment of officials and maintaining order, able to learn of the contents of memorials to the throne. This person's position was very delicate. He came from Jiangnan, but he was no high-born aristocrat. In his youth, he had enrolled in the Kuangshan Academy and studied under Cheng Guang. Later, he had passed the imperial examinations and, as was to be expected, joined the court of the censorate to accumulate experience. Prior to this, Gu Shanlue had always been a nobody. First time he had stuck his neck out was during the Eastern Tartar diplomatic mission case. The upshot was the case had come to nothing, and his teacher had been sent to prison. spent a miserable half a year, and finally it had been Fu Shen who had asked Yan Xiaohan to get his teacher out. Because of this, while at court in Jinling, Shanlua had always stood with the old ministers from the north, but Jiangnan's new nobles had treated him differently from the rest. On returning to the capital, they further expressed goodwill and attempted to win him over many times, trying to win Jiangnan a helping hand in Yanning Hall. Though imperial censors did not inspire joy in courtiers, they were indeed an excellent weapon when it came to dealing with one's political opponents. But Shanlao's attitude had been already... We're going to just restart that paragraph. But Shanlua's attitude had always been ambitious. He seemed cultured and refined, no less shrewd than the old foxes. Since returning to the capital, he had almost no contact with people like Fu Shen and Yan Xiaohan. The average person wouldn't have thought that he had an old friendship with the two of them. Gu Shanlua said, "As an imperial censor, it is inappropriate for me to communicate openly with you, General. I hope you will see fit to forgive me for having to resort to this move. I've taken the liberty of asking you to come here today because of the matter that recently caused His Majesty concern." Fu Shen twirled a wine cup in his fingers. It'd be weird if he was twisting it around. He wasn't the least surprised at his direct opening. Calmly, he said, "Has he spoken to you as well?" "That's right." Gu Shanlua refilled his wine cup. "His Majesty wishes to launch an attack against Xinan, so he must first obtain the approval of Yanning Hall. At present, the 48 assembly members seem scattered, but in fact, there are only a few leaders. If he sounds them out in turn, he will be able to understand Yanning Hall's attitude." "His Majesty wants me to lead the troops," Fu Shen said. "I spent ages trying to talk him out of it, but I couldn't move him." With a bitter laugh, Gu Shanlua said, "When I went to the palace in the morning, His Majesty was just raging about the matter of Annan and the two other nations. He suggested that the court of the censorate censor Commander Prince Sipeng, which would give him just cause. Furthermore, I am not certain that Yanning Hall will oppose this manner." "I would like to hear more," said Fu Shen. Gu Shanla said, Shinan becoming independent has 100 disadvantages and no advantages for the court. For one thing, it's too close to Jingshu and Lingnan. If Commander Prince Sipeng wishes to expand his sphere of influence, those two places will be among the first to come to grief. Second, Sinan is in communication with Annan and Shenla. If Sinan allies with these small nations, not only will it be difficult for the court to communicate on land with the nations of the southeast, it will also impact sea trade. And since the army took back the capital, the court and the commons have all been beside themselves with complacency. I hear that they praise you up to the skies, say that the Beiyuan cavalry is made up of divine soldiers and divine generals, all conquering. So if it were someone else leading the troops, perhaps they would think it over. But if it is you leading the troops, then they will not have so many misgivings." Fu Shen had no answer to give. He could only respond with a sneer. "They truly have good opinions of me, it seems." "There is one other thing," Gu Shanla said seriously. "Commander Prince Sipeng is a former subordinate of the Beiyuan army, profoundly connected to you, to the Duke of Ying Manor. Perhaps you have already noticed it, General. There are many eyes at court fixed on you. The ones above them are no exception. If anything should go wrong in the Western expedition, the circumstances would be suspicious. It's hard to say what would happen. So, watch your back." "Is there any need for so much scheming?" Fu Shen picked up his wine cup and drank. Self-mockingly, he said, "If I had wanted to do a bit of something, would I have needed to wait this long?" "It is precisely the fact that you haven't done a bit of something that is making some people uneasy," Gu Shanla said. With your power and influence now, and your reputation at its prime, by the time you truly plan to do something, who would be able to bar the way? He sighed gently. As the proverb says, you must prepare for all eventualities. Fushan didn't know whether Gu Shunla had invited him to eat or come here deliberately to annoy him. At any rate, when he finally left the restaurant, smelling of alcohol and with a belly full of fury, he was seized and forced into a carriage by a certain highway bandit who had been laying in wait for ages. Called it! Vinegar jar! All right, Yan Xiaohan said darkly, grinding his teeth. You told me to stay home and wait for you, then ran off drinking with someone else. So called it. So called it! With a man? Ooh, honey, you in trouble. You in trouble. Fu Shen silently threw his arms open and pressed down, hugging him heavily. The tail end of Yan Xiaohan's threat instantly changed tune. With a dry cough, he said, What are you doing? Don't think you can get out of this by being cute. What's wrong? This drinking made you depressed. Mingwei, he whispered. Before the last wave could fall, the next one arose. They had switched emperors twice, but the current one was still as suspicious and paranoid as the others. The words, great achievements disturb the master, were like dark clouds forever looming. As long as Fu Shen lived, he would never be able to leave this haze. Gotta feel bad for the guy. His voice made Yan Xiaohan's heart instantly feel as if a cat had scratched it. He stopped, smirking up a little higher. All right, I'm here. What's wrong? Tell me. What happened? Fu Shen didn't want to talk. He suddenly felt a little sad, so he hugged Yan Xiaohan tighter. Seeing him not speaking, only snuggling into his arms, seeming deeply aggrieved, Yan Xiaohan couldn't resist a quiet laugh. In the helpless tone of one too indulgent to be capable of doing anything, he said, All right. If you don't want to tell me, you don't have to. Are you sleepy? Go to sleep for now. The carriage was jolting, the embrace was warm, and the wine had gone to his head. Amid a daze of disappointment, Fu Shen fell asleep. When he woke in the middle of the night, he found himself lying calmly in bed, clean and fresh, with no smell of alcohol. From the other side of the pillow came another person's long, even breaths. Yan Xiaohan was turned towards him with a hand lying on his waist through the quilt. By the obscured weak light coming in through the bed curtains, Fu Shen could see his peaceful and quiet sleeping countenance. He was awake, and he had sobered up. Fu Shen lengthened his breath slowly calmed down in the train. I think there's possibly a typo. Fu Shen lengthened his breath slowly calmed down in the tranquil night. Whatever. Now, when he remembered Emperor Changxi's notification in the afternoon and Guo Shanlua's warnings, his feelings weren't so acute. It's because his hubby's there. He even felt a little ridiculous. Before, Emperor Yuntai had first tried to assassinate him, arranged a marriage for him, bringing all kinds of means to bear in turn, one bolt out of the blue after another, and hadn't he gotten through it all just fine? Why, after so many things had changed, when he stood even higher, he was worse than before, worried enough to sulk at Yan Xiaohan over a trifle like this? It was all Yan Xiaohan's fault. Only now did Fu Shen learn that he was truly at ease beside Yan Xiaohan. It was a powerful sense of security that he had never derived from another person before. Never mind the rest. If this had been before with someone next to him, Fu Shen definitely wouldn't have been able to put his head down and sleep after drinking, and he certainly wouldn't have moved this way and that, washed and undressed, and still not have woken up after all that. He felt safe. Oh. The Emperor had only just had this thought. To put it into practice would require going through one barrier after another. It might take ages until they really opened hostilities. Even if Yanning Hall gave the nod and permitted it, and he really had to take troops out on an expedition, he could still take his time and discuss it with Duan Gao Hong when he got to Sinan. At worst, he could drag it out for a year or two. What was there worth worrying about? Sometimes, coming to the end of the road didn't mean there truly was no line of retreat, but that your bottom line was too high. Facing Emperor Yun Tai, Fu Shen had had some scruples. But if Emperor Chang Shi one day pushed him into a situation like that, for the sake of the empire, Fu Shen naturally wouldn't object to installing a new emperor in the depths of the imperial palace to rule over the vast territory. Finally, he became lost in thought and accidentally rolled over. The outcome was that at this slight movement, Yan Xiaohan actually woke up and murkily asked, Jing Yuan? It's nothing. Go back to sleep. Fu Shen was wide awake. He pulled the thin quilt higher over him. Yan Xiaohan made a soft sound of agreement and seemed to sink back into dreams. But not long after, he opened his eyes again and looked at him with a clear gaze. Are you sober? Yes. Fu Shen picked up a lock of hair from beside the pillow and wound it around his finger. Don't worry about me. Go back to sleep. When you're awake, why would I sleep? Yan Xiaohan draped a robe over himself and got out of bed. He poured 2 cups of tea and carried them back. The two of them silently moistened their throats. Yan Xiaohan lit a lamp, then lay back down in bed. Can you tell me now? What? Said Fu Shen. When the emperor summoned you to the palace this afternoon, did he talk about Sinan? Yan Xiaohan hugged him loosely. And did Gu Shenlua invite you in the evening to talk about the same thing? Look how upset they made our Lord Duke. It had been many years since Fu Shen had had an opportunity to experience the skills of this boss of the Fei Long Guard. He was disbelieving. How did you know? Did I put you in my purse when I went out? Nothing to it, Yan Xiaohan said, laughing. It's only my old profession. The familiar ability to get into everything. What exactly had Emperor Yuntai raised? Not even his own son could escape being deceived. While the Fei Long Guard had been dissolved, the old staff remained, and what was more, since returning to the capital, the Imperial Guards had been controlled entirely by Yan Xiaohan. He had long ago arranged countless spies, both in the open and in the shadows. After the affair of the Golden Terrace gathering, Emperor Chang Shi had become suspicious of him. There was Xu Shang and other such people stirring up trouble every day. He didn't trust him as extensively as he had before, but the people at the emperor's disposal were truly limited. Apart from Yan Xiaohan, he could find no one else capable of directing the Imperial Guards, so he had to hold his nose and continue to use him. The consequences of this was more or less equivalent to leading the wolf into your house and placing your throat at its sharp teeth. It was far too late to close the door. Moreover, there was Yan Xiaohan himself, taught by instruction and example from a young age by the foremost eunuch in the Yuntai court, Duan Linglong. He had joined the North Yemen Imperial Guards as a teenager and served as a guard before the emperor. Later, he became the imperial investigator of the Fei Long Guard, running rampant throughout the court and commons. Politics and intrigue had become like breathing, instinctive in nature. Noticing a change in Emperor Chang Shi's attitude, he had put some slight effort into playing up to the emperor, and as expected, Emperor Chang Shi had once again become pleasant and amiable towards him, relying heavily on him. Fu Shen was forced to acknowledge that where cheating and swindling were concerned, Yan Xiaohan was far superior to him. This was a talent that couldn't be learned. If it had been Yan Xiaohan who had gone to the palace for an audience with the emperor this afternoon, perhaps he could have coaxed Emperor Chang Shi into changing his mind. His Majesty is very persistent about this. I'm afraid he won't easily let it go. Having heard out Fu Shen's account, Yan Xiaohan rejected the idea that he would have been able to convince Emperor Chang Shi. He must have worked out what His Majesty's temperament is, too. He can't bear upsets, and he aims higher than he can reach. Before ascending to the throne, at least he needed to be afraid and understood when to hold back. But as soon as the empire was his to command, he became completely self-centered and excessively stubborn. And mediocrity wasn't frightening. Mediocrity wasn't frightening. A person with lofty aims and underhanded means was frightening. A fool wasn't frightening. A person who tried to be clever was frightening. Oh, okay, that's why it's fuzzy. He didn't have the retired emperor's strength, but he wants to imitate the retired emperor's methods. Before, in Jiangnan, he put the old ministers from the north into positions of power, but now, for the sake of equilibrium, he wishes to raise the Jiangnan families, Yan Xiaohan said. Apart from this, there is also the problem of national prestige, the problem of Jiangnan's safety. The subject of Western expedition, His Majesty's position is identical to that of the Jiangnan families, so he can't be convinced, and too many attempts to convince him will make him angry at you. Fu Shen frowned. So there's nothing we can do. We have to just let him have it his way? Unless there's an earthquake on Mount Tai or unusual celestial phenomena, the situation will be difficult to save. Through a layer of clothing, Yan Xiaohan massaged his shoulder. Gu Xuan La's warnings make sense. You're a thorn in the flesh for many people now. Whether this ultimately succeeds or not, they're all going to be thinking of ways to find fault with you and even seize the opportunity to drag in the Empress and the Crown Prince. You have to be careful. I know, Fu Shen said with a sigh. Seems that not even Yanning Hall can get in the way of him seeking death. You have to eat your food, mouthful by mouthful, and the new system has to advance step by step. Don't be impatient. Yan Xiaohan pressed down on the center of his brow. Come on, don't frown. Smile. It's the middle of the night. What are you raving and ranting about now? Fu Shen said expressionlessly. I won't smile. Why don't you give me a smile? Be good. Smile, Yan Xiaohan said enticingly. You made me wait all afternoon today. Shouldn't you make it up to me somehow? Vexed and plagued like this, colossal fretfulness dispersed. He had meant to hold on to his stern expression for a while longer, but the outcome was that he couldn't resist laughing. He poked a small patch of exposed skin on Yan Xiaohan's chest. Rascal. Yan Xiaohan said with justice on his side. A good man doesn't find a good wife. A rascal finds himself a beautiful branch. The beautiful branch shook until it nearly turned into a beggar's club. When Fu Shen at last managed to even out his breathing, Yan Xiaohan pulled him into the arms along with the quilt and fiercely proclaimed, I'm going to wreck you. Ha 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 ha. Events proceeded as they were foreseen. Not long after, Emperor Chengxi introduced the subject of the punitive expedition against Shinan in Yaninghao, and apart from the northern frontier armies, which still stood on Fu Shen's side, the other 40-some assembly members, including Yan Xiaohan, agreed to His Majesty's proposal. After this event, there was an extra layer of meaning in the gazes people leveled at them. During the northern campaign, the Beiyuan army and the Tianfu army had still presentably marched together. But hardly any time had passed, and now the undercurrent of disagreement between the two of them had been brought to the forefront. The nation was easily changed, but character was hard to alter. A sycophant was always unreliable. In the spring of the following year, the Duke of Jing, Fu Shen, led an army of 100,000 south under orders to carry out a punitive expedition against Commandery Prince Sipeng Duan Gaohong. This time, it wasn't his former subordinates in the Beiyuan cavalry who went on campaign with him, but a strengthened army of the court. Its main forces were composed of the Jiangnan army that Xiao Shichen had led while retaking the Central Plains. Once again, they were upon Golden Terrace in the capital's outskirts, banners flapping with war horses neighing. Emperor Chengxi in person left the city to see off the army, just as Emperor Yuntai had once led the civil and military officials to send off the teenage general on his way north to resist the enemy. They seemed full of magnificent sentiments and lofty aspirations, but in reality they were only coldly looking on. Yan Xiaohan stood not far from Emperor Chengxi. His eyes swept over the various high ministers, and at last settled on Emperor Chengxi's slightly plump figure. Yan Xiaohan had no expression. His face looked cold and indifferent, but this instead made him seem even more real than the ruler and his ministers, with their faces full of feigned emotion. From a distance, Fu Shen looked up and sent a glance his way. Their eyes met in midair. Yan Xiaohan nodded gently. He dimly felt that under his hard helmet, that person seemed to be smiling. The night before his departure, Yan Xiaohan had said to Fu Shen, "All you need to worry about is going south. I'm here to guard the rear for you. There's nothing for you to worry about." Fu Shen hadn't said anything at the time, only smiled and lifted his chin to kiss him. He seemed completely ignorant, yet also able to see the truth clearly. A spring breeze swept over the countryside. Yan Xiaohan watched the commander's flag gradually recede into the distance. In his mind, he silently completed the words he had left unfinished the night before. "When you come back, I will give you back a clean court." Ooh, he's got a clean house. And that is the end of our chapters tonight. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. And a pretty good place to end it. We're about to head over and start another war, another skirmish. So I couldn't have planned that better. But yeah, there's our last chapter for tonight. I'm pretty happy with tonight's session. We had the ending of the war. Had some really sweet interactions between our boys. And we're kind of seeing what kind of emperor Chengxi is right now. And we're definitely disappointed with kind of what emperor he is. Yeah, the writings of the battles in this one are very cool. I agree. You don't get a ton of detail, but you feel like it's enough. It's not over much. And just it's paced well. It has very nice pacing. I agree. But yeah, so next Thursday it will be the regular time, 8 CST, Central Standard Time. And we will do chapters 75 through chapter we're actually ending the main story this Thursday, and then we will start the extras. So I was actually wrong. How many are left? So technically we will be finishing the main book this Thursday, so 2 days from now. That's pretty exciting. And then they have extras, which we will do that on Tuesday. So speaking of, I'm going to post up a survey. Oh my gosh, a verses for our next book. So the two choices, since we're doing Peach Flower House. I always say tree house. It's not. Books first, since those are harder to get, and I have them. It's between The Imperial Uncle and Peach Blossom Debt. So I will post a poll. There we go. That's the word. A poll once I end the stream. So you guys can go ahead and enter that, and we'll have 2 sessions to put that up, and then whatever comes next, we will do that. But yeah, this is exciting. We're going to be ending our story next session, and then just have the extras left on Tuesday. That might be a bit longer because they're kind of thick. So it might be split up into 2, depending. We'll see how long it takes. It'll probably just be 1. But anyway, this was fun. I see there are a number of people here, and that's really exciting. Hello. If it's your first time, I hope you had a good time. But yeah, I will see you all Thursday to finish our main story. Good night.